Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Board of Education meeting. We'll begin as we always do with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Hello again and welcome. Wow, what a spring we're having, huh? Let's hope that it really is springtime. The calendar says that it is. We've just got to get Mother Nature to confer with the calendar and we'll be all set. Okay, administrative remarks, I guess that's you, Ms. Culligan. Welcome.
Good evening. I just want to bring your attention to this packet I left at everybody's place.
Yep.
This is the recruitment packet we've been working with BOCES on, and also the building leaders. It's a packet that always takes recruitment fairs with me to give out information on our school district.
Wow.
Inside you see an application, and then you'll see the information about Brewster on the right-hand side.
Very professional. Thank you. Thank you very much. Ms. Gosh, batter up.
I don't have any handouts, but I have some information. Next Monday night is the date where we host a screening of Most Likely to Succeed. So if you could all join us at March 6 o'clock in the PAC and bring a friend, that would be great. And next week we kick off our New York State assessments. The ELA assessments run the 28th through 30th of March. Both Civic, Starr and Wells sent a letter home notifying parents of the testing dates and also included some procedural information for them. And the New York State assessments in math will be on May 2nd through the 4th.
Sounds good. We're getting there. And Mr. Carlson, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. Good evening. A few items. First and foremost, I'd like to acknowledge Mr. Andy Bates, Mr. Ken Winch, and the entire O&M department, as well as the transportation department, for their efforts during this past week's snowstorm. We missed Tuesday and Wednesday due to the storm. However, we came in on time on Thursday, and that's more than some other districts in our region can say. A few of them had 2 hour delays and even some closures. So obviously, it's through the efforts of our 2 departments that we're able to get our students back in school on Thursday. So again, I'd just like to acknowledge those 2 departments and congratulate them on a job well done.
Yes, thank you.
You bet.
Mr. Bates, Mr. Berardo, and I met with Robin Green, president of Brewster Sports Foundation, to discuss the potential renovations to the varsity softball and varsity baseball fields. It's something that's been on our radar for the past couple of years. However, with the ongoing construction, we do have some limitations from our friends over at the DEP, as we're all very familiar with. We're on DEP grounds, and as such, we have to comply by their rules.
Yep.
One rule in particular limits the amount of land disruption that we can create at any one point in time. And our current project is nearly at the level of disturbance allowed by DEP. So unfortunately, that really restricts what we're able to do with the baseball and softball fields and other athletic fields until after the construction is concluded. But we do have a list of some items, some of which we can do. We'd like to review that and host a parent forum with the spring sports parents. We'd like to do that in the coming weeks. Mr. Berardo, Mr. Bates, and I will be working on finalizing that list of what we can do and what we can't do, but also putting together a proposed timeline of the things that we can do and when we intend to do them. This whole time we've been meeting with Insight Engineering, who are our civil engineers. Excuse me, our environmental engineering. And they're the ones who have really been communicating with DEP, and they're our eyes and ears and are able to tell us what we can and cannot do. So that's coming up in the next few weeks. One other thing I'd like to mention is Kathy Ash and Meg Schatt attended the Chef Ann School Food Support Initiative grant training in Boulder, Colorado last week. They had a great experience working directly with Chef Ann and her team. And I also wanted to make mention that Chef Ann and her team will be in district during the week of April 3rd, turnkeying some very important techniques to our staff. They'll be here the whole week, so we're looking forward to that. And then lastly, I'd like to provide an update on an issue we've unfortunately been dealing with for this past year. At Starr, we identified that we had a roach problem in a couple of classrooms, and we've taken some corrective, well, the issue began back in December of 2015, and we took some corrective actions that we believed had resolved the issue, and we believed at the time that it was an isolated incident. Unfortunately, we find ourselves in a similar situation where we have roaches again. So rather than taking a reactive approach, as we did this past December, we want to take a proactive approach. You'll notice an agenda item number C8, which is an agreement with the pest management company. So we want to take a proactive approach and make sure that we're fumigating, and this becomes part of our ordinary pest management plan. So you'll see that agenda item for the board's consideration, and that concludes my comments for this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Carlson. Dr. Henning, how are you tonight?
Great, thank you, Dr. Jambor, Board Trustees. Just a few items to share with you. Congratulations to Brewster High School for its second edition of Bare Facts. Marvelous collection of articles and stories of the life of students. It's wonderfully organized, so thanks to all who were involved in creating that edition. Mary Poppins opens this week, so make sure that you get your tickets. The first showing is 7:30 on Thursday, Saturday, Friday night, and then Saturday from 2 and 7:30. They've been rehearsing. Obviously, we have lots of talented young people in the district, and that talent comes to a head in the high school. As you recall, the Brewster High School PTSA funded a visit to the makery by the engineering, for the engineering class, the Project Lead the Way class at the high school, the first course taught by Ms. Rebecca Greenfield. And she shared a wonderful note about how much the students enjoyed attending the makery. For some of them, they said it was the best field trip they've ever had, and they wanted to know how to bring those things back into the classroom so that there was more making going on. So they appreciate the generosity of the Brewster High School PTSA for making that trip possible. Again, to echo what Mr. Carlson just mentioned, last week's weather was very taxing, but obviously our Buildings and Grounds team, which always steps up, has worked tirelessly along with the Transportation Department to make sure that every parking lot, every bus was covered, and was cleared. As you know, the winds were pretty high, and so that was repeat work that was going on. So once they shoveled, the wind blew it right back, and they started all over again. So it was very tiresome. But the fact that we could open the next day without delay was obviously evidence of the hard work of all the teams. So thank you, Mr. Bates and Mr. Coxon and everyone who helped to make that possible. Last Friday at Wells, there was a very successful spaghetti bistro, and it was a fundraiser not only for scholarships for 8th graders who are going to the Washington, D.C. trip, but it's also a scholarship for the Barbara, or fundraiser for the Barbara Gillette Memorial Scholarship, which was a former teacher in our district. So that's a magnificent way in which the Wells community has continuously collected or conducted this fundraising, and have actually purchased, or the contributions have gone to helping communities and our families and students. It actually refurbished a room where children and their parents were reunited, and offered a very clean, hospitable, comfortable space. So that was about $3,800 that was contributed by the Wells Middle School, so that's pretty awesome. On March 28th, next week, Tuesday, the Brewster Community Learning Center will have an open house in the lobby of H.H. Wells Middle School from 7 to 8 p.m. It's to launch the first 14 courses that are available for registration. Hopefully, everyone has received a mailing. If they haven't, it actually went out on their backpack as well. I want to thank Ms. Susan Gavin, Ms. Kathy Keene for working very hard to help to get that mailing out and available. We hope that we will have residents who will attend the open house who will also register there, so we'll be able to take your money as well. The Brewster High School Marching Band, in its 9th year, participated in the St. Patrick's Day Parade, which was amazing, as evidenced by photos from Ms. Gavin. Thank you very much. So it's the Marching Bears and the NJROTC Color Guard. They played Londonderry Air, which is Old Danny Boy, something else a little more upbeat, Uptown Funk, which they do a great job with, and a dancing machine. So it was really awesome, and our families who were there and onlookers cheered our marching band on, so I want to thank Mr. Admiral, Coach, it's not Coach, Chris Valangas, who joined us this last year and has done an amazing job with that marching band. The Strategic Coherence Planning team meets tomorrow, so we'll continue that work, and you'll hear some more about that during our budget presentation. And to echo what Ms. Gosch just mentioned, the most likely to succeed screening is next week, March 27th at 6 p.m. Hopefully you'll come. We've read the book, and this is a portrayal of it. So it's a very interesting story that, and it'll be interesting to hear the reactions from students, from parents, from administrators, and others of their impressions of the book as opposed to what's portrayed in the film. And I think that takes care of it.
Well, it sounds comprehensive, that's for sure. A little more exciting than what I'm going to be talking about. For those of you at home who've been trying to follow the funding game this spring and keeping score, let me bring you as up to date as I can. Metaphorically speaking, we're about in the 5th inning in the budget season, so we're coming into the latter portion of the game. The budget in Washington and the budget in Albany are creeping along, but some news has come out with regard to educational funding. In brief, in Albany, each house has its bill. In each of the 2 bills, there is a promise of additional funding for education. But as you know, nothing will get settled until literally the last hour, sometime early in the morning, around April 1st. When the 3 men in the room get together and decide just what it's going to look like. So let's not count our chickens before they're hatched. For sure, the situation in Washington is far less promising. And I'm going to be speaking only as a person who's concerned with kids in our school district. I have no political sense of the world at all. But I do need to inform you this. We will be cut. Public education in the United States of America will be cut by $9 billion with a B dollars. That is very bad news. There's no way to sugarcoat that. We have not been fully funded, at least during the past 20 years. Somebody can go look that up for sure, but you've got to go back before NCLB. So we've never been fully funded. In fact, I know the numbers moving forward from NCLB. You probably are tired of hearing me repeat them, but just to give you the context tonight, we were promised 40% funding from NCLB for those initiatives in that piece of legislation. The feds never exceeded 17%, so we were underfunded. And then comes along the race to the top. Another one sounds great. By my own estimates, and it's conservative, Mr. Carlson could give you better numbers, but trust this, for every dollar that we got from them, we spent at least $4, at least. So in other words, race to the top didn't bring us a windfall of support. It didn't get us fully funded either, which is where I'm going with this story now. So now all of a sudden we've got a situation where public education is seriously underfunded for these 20 years. Someone comes along and says to you just barely 48 hours ago, and we are going to cut you by $9 billion, but not to worry, the neediest among your students, and we know who that is, are not going to suffer. I'm thinking, by what miracle can this possibly happen? I'm losing $9 billion. I haven't been fully funded up till now. Please tell me how. Here's how. They're going to increase choices. They're going to give the poor kids, the ELL kids, the special education kids, et al., all, more choices. Not all of these choices are ready right now for usage. In fact, some of them haven't even been invented or designed or validated yet, but we're going to take the money that you might have otherwise been getting, Brewster, and we're going to put it over here and start up a privatization subsidy So in other words, the federal government, Department of Education, is going to get into the business of subsidizing private charter schools. That's the choice they're talking about. That's the fix that they're talking about. Okay? That's not cool at all. In fact, that's something that you ought to really resent. Because here's what's really happening. They're changing right from underneath you, the vigilant taxpayer, the model. The model in town for all these years, like 200 plus years, has been public education, freely available for everyone. Period. Our bottom line, watch this. This is unrehearsed. I just startled Ms. Gosh. Ms. Gosh, what's the bottom line in our business, this public education thing that we do? What's our bottom line?
Educating all students.
I love it. What's our bottom line?
Educating all students.
Now I'm going to ask the business person, Mr. Carlson, what's our bottom line?
I'm going to go with educating all students.
There you go, he's a smart guy. You walk into corporate America, the private sector, into their boardroom, and you ask them, what's your bottom line? You know what they're going to say. Profit, profit, profit. Doesn't take a genius to figure that out. That's how come I figured it out. Okay? So here's the rub. You change our bottom line to profit, I'm wagering it's going to change what we do and how we do it. What makes us successful are people who, like, quote, missionaries, take this work on because it really matters to them. In their heart, they believe this makes a difference in terms of preparing kids for the next century. They believe it, they bleed it, you see it every day, okay? I feel threatened on behalf of this mission when somebody tells me, you cut $9 billion, but not to worry, we've got more choices coming online. Enough said.
You want dollars associated with that? What that
Sure,
means for us?
yeah, do you have some dollars?
Sure do.
Okay.
Our district receives about $1.3 million from that did you say $9 billion that was cut?
Right.
And that's in the form of several grants. Two of them, 611 and 619, are grants for special education. Title I is a grant for low-income students. Title IIA is a grant for professional development. And Title III is for students with English as a new language learners. If that was cut, that means whatever we use with those dollars, which are primarily to fund those programs, would have to be borne by the taxpayer. So we already know that $65,000 is cut. Title IIA for professional learning, it's been indicated, I mean, that's stated pretty clearly, that one's gone.
Yep.
That's gutted. So so this will impact the very groups of children, as you said, are not going to be served by a $9 billion cut. And for us, you know, as you know, and you're going to hear from our budget presentation, we're changing demographics. We have needs, and so those very funds that are at risk, that we're at risk of losing, are going to go away. We're still going to have those needs.
We sure are. Thank you. Okay, so let's talk to a representative of our bottom line. Is Jemima here tonight? No. She is. That's okay. She's probably doing her homework. All right. Presentation is recognition and discussion. We're going to talk about policy conversion. Hi, Ms. Gosh. How are you? Sure.
It's a number of people standing outside. You want to give them a break to just
Come in and
Oh,
Sure,
Missy.
yeah. Come on in.
Come on in.
No, it's okay.
Sorry, I couldn't
That's
just see
nice.
him out there.
Oh, thanks.
I didn't think you did.
I appreciate it.
Very nice. Okay,
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Gosh.
So the next step in our policy conversion is two sections. Section 3000, administration, and section 7000, facilities. So, as always, Allison Smith is here to walk us through these two sections.
Thank you for joining us.
Hello, everybody. These two sections are very simple, so we can go through them quickly. The section 3000, the two policies at issue have to do with the powers of the one has to do with the powers of the superintendent. Now the education law, section 1711, gives the superintendent certain powers, but also says that the board can authorize the superintendent with any powers it desires. So this policy, the first policy at issue, discusses the role that the superintendent is going to take in the district, and I would recommend that can go straight to the board. However, when the board considers it, they just want to make sure that you're looking specifically at the additional responsibilities that this policy language would be granting the superintendent. It's discretionary. You're free to grant those powers to the superintendent or not grant them, so just keep that in mind when you're reviewing that policy. And then the next few policies in the 3000 section are actually all being combined into one policy. These just have to do with the organizational chart for the district and the lines of supervision and the lines of authority. There's nothing huge that's changing there. It's just kind of memorializing what already is, and maybe take that opportunity to review your organizational chart, see if anything needs to be updated. So that is it for the 3000s series.
Okay.
And then in the 7000 series, we have a few policies. These are about architects, facilities, different policies such as that. We have the facilities inspection, operation, and maintenance policy that we're going to leave as is. I also believe that the board can consider the policy about facilities inspection, operation, and maintenance. That additional language is just outlining the statutory requirements, the regulatory requirements that the board already probably follows, and it's just memorializing that in policy. We already went over the policy on booster clubs and everything like that, so the policy section on 7420 sports and the athletic program, we don't need to add the additional language that we had originally recommended about booster clubs, because that has since been discussed separately. So the last policy in the 7000s is the only policy that we recommend go to the policy committee, and that is a new policy for the district. This is Erie Wombosi's policy called Contests for Students, Student Awards, and Scholarships. So it just outlines the criteria that would be used for scholarships and student awards and contests. It's a very short policy, but again, that's a discretionary policy, so we would recommend that the policy committee consider it based on current practice and see what they want to do going forwards as well. So that's really it. So those ones are very simple.
Well, thank you.
And we're moving forward very
Yeah,
well
we are.
with the policy committee, so
Thank you for all your
thank you.
support.
You're welcome.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Okay. Now, we move back to our budget discussion, which you and Mr. Carlson will be coordinating.
And Ms. Dodge
In
and
the time. I hope to have it all back. Okay.
So good evening again, our Board of Education trustees and members of the audience. What you're going to hear is basically the vision. So the question that Dr. Gandor asked will hopefully be embodied in this budget presentation, which is the bottom line is it's all about students. This was part 2 of our budget presentation. Last week we presented some overview ideas. Some of those are part of this presentation, so if you hear them again, it's because it's further explanation and sort of embedded in the same message. As you know, actually this is the anniversary of the adoption of our strategic coherence plan, and exactly, in March of last year, this board in this very room adopted our strategic coherence plan, which really sets out for us, our beliefs about how we're going to prepare children to live, learn, and work in the 21st century that we're 17 years into. And this plan, requires us to take our content, and integrate these core competencies, which include problem solving, critical thinking, communication, collaboration, perseverance, resilience, adaptability, flexibility, and civic and social responsibility. Those skills cannot be taught in higher level courses, and some students not receive them. They're critical to the success of students in this century, and they have to be integrated into the content, both social, emotional, and academic competencies. We have to, and have been spending time this year articulating and understanding on what these skills look like. Actually, our next meeting is tomorrow. The Strategic Coherence Planning team comes together again, and we're going to be working on the profile of a graduate of this district and all of those skills that we need to see, and then backfill that across the system. So what it looks like as a student graduates, what it looks like in the middle school, what it looks like in CV Starr and K2. So across the system, all of this work has to happen. It can't wait until students are ready to exit. And again, this applies to all students. You've heard us talk about, English as a new language learners, students with disabilities, low-income students. Every student that comes to this district, that's a resident of this district, is expected to acquire these skills, and we have to teach all students to make sure that they're prepared to be critical thinkers and problem solvers in this ever-changing world. In terms of the work with educators, it does require educators to do some things differently. So it really was shocking to me when I read that the federal government is planning to cut the professional learning dollars. So those monies that were used to help our teachers to work together during the summer or after school are in jeopardy. And we need that money because we need to make sure that across the system, K-12, our educators are looking at curriculum, they're looking at instruction, assessment, their learning environment where the learning takes place, and professional learning to make sure that they're integrating those skills. So they just can't look at curriculum and not look at these other areas. So it's very important that we are able to continue to do that work, and we hope that this budget helps us to do that. In addition, again, the goal of all the work is to improve the outcomes for all of our students, and most importantly, our students with disabilities, English as a new language learners, and low-income students, because we're also looking at our data. And we have some opportunities to improve the outcomes for these learners, and so we must always have that at the forefront of the work that we're doing. So, what kinds of things are we looking at? We're looking at providing the least restrictive learning environments. So we don't want to overly segregate students and deprive them of some of those opportunities. We are looking at ways to differentiate learning and instruction and teaching and content to make sure that we're looking at ways for children to access content according to their learning styles, ways in which teachers can teach that content differently to different learners that can be in a least restrictive environment. And obviously to integrate those content, those 21st century skills so that those are accessible to students, and that's where differentiation becomes a critical tool for doing that. And we're also continuing to implement the recommendations by the Syracuse University team that conducted the program review a year ago as well, which again looks at the areas of restrictiveness, of delivery of services, making sure that children are in classrooms, and that we look at our models in terms of how we offer co-teaching and so forth.
So in addition to offering supplemental programs and services, we want to make sure that this budget also includes enrichment activities for all students. Thanks to the Board of Education, we were able to implement clubs at the K-5 level. So JFK, both JFK and CV Starr have 5 clubs each, which are mostly STEAM/innovation related, but we were also able to implement a world language club in each of the buildings because we know that's a global competency that we wish to foster and promote as we move forward. We're excited that this year at the middle school and the high school we were able to implement 2 Project Lead the Way courses. In 7th grade we have design and modeling, and in 9th grade we have the Intro to Engineering course. The plan for next year is to offer at the middle school at least 1 Project Lead the Way course in each grade level, and in the high school to offer the next step in the Intro to Engineering sequence. So there will be a section for 9th graders and for 10th graders. And also, we've had a lot of movement lately in terms of technology, and we want to make sure that we're looking at technology, not just integration, but technology infusion. So we want to make sure that maker spaces and Z spaces are infused into our curriculum throughout the system. At our last board meeting, Dr. Henry Piedmont and I spoke about the social emotional supports that we have for students K-12, and we talked about the inherent interconnectedness of student learning and social emotional well-being. The budget for next year supports Ruler at the K-5 level, COPE program at 6-12, and of course our ongoing PBIS efforts. What we also hope to do next year is to really utilize and leverage the MTSS structures that we have in place K-12 to integrate more restorative justice opportunities for our students.
Professional learning can't be elevated enough in terms of its importance, because we can't learn and grow and change our practices if we don't have opportunities to do that. And that's not only a premium for our students who are leaving the system, ongoing learning is a critical part of survival in the century. The same applies for the adult learners. So in our 2017-18 school year calendar, we built in more time for educators to collaborate. They need time to learn together, to work together, to share practices, as well as to embed within the course of their school days, whether it's during PLC times or early release or conference days, opportunities for more learning and more collaboration. Last year, Ms. Gosh organized a very successful model called an Ed Camp, where basically all the educators across the system converged at the high school, and teachers had planned in advance, and clinicians and a whole array of professionals in the system offered various workshops. So not only were educators able to potentially offer a workshop, but they were able to attend several others. And it included administrators. Administrators were partnering with teachers, so it was really a marvelous example of job-embedded, celebration of expertise, and we hope to continue that into the coming year.
So while we strive to provide the highest quality education for our students, we also need to be mindful of our community's ability to support our schools, and as such, we remain under the New York State tax cap again for the 6th consecutive year. Another one of our budget priorities is to maintain our fund balance, which is our accumulated savings. And you may recall from a few years back, we received the New York State Controller's audit that focused on our fund balance and reserve levels, and we received high praise for that. So we want to continue that sound fiscal management.
And in terms of the continuing the focus on efficiencies or developing efficiencies through strategic use of resources and staff, we're always looking at ways to make sure that we look at opportunities through attrition or otherwise to revamp how we use staff, to look at our district in terms of our needs and make decisions that we probably couldn't have, as well as cultivate the internal talent of the district by promoting internally, by offering opportunities, to look at, the pool of talent in the district rather than always going out and looking for those folks. Yes.
So the challenges that we face in developing our budget, again, as Dr. Henning mentioned earlier, we have changing demographics, as you'll see in a following slide. Also, state aid uncertainty. We're battling right now to regain some of the foundation aid that we're being shortchanged by New York State. We're entering year 6 of the allowable tax levy legislation, more commonly known as the tax cap. And despite those 3 challenges above, we're striving to implement a bold strategic coherence plan.
Our demographics is a topic, that we talk about a lot in the district, and we wanted to share this with you so that you got a sense of the shifts that have occurred in the district. Our economically disadvantaged children. Remember, I mentioned Title I. Title I is that grant. One of the grants is on the chopping block that for a number of districts. From 2010 to 2011, we've experienced almost a doubling of the numbers of families who qualify for free and reduced lunch. So a third of our population is considered low income. Our students with disabilities, in terms of the classification rate, we're a little higher than the state, but that means 14% is about 470 students in the system who receive specialized services under special education. And our English as a new language learners, that population is that number only represents students who are in the program. It doesn't represent the fact that 29% of our population in the district identify as Hispanic. So while 7%, approximately about 265 or so students qualify for those E&L services, not only do they receive those services until they exit, but there are 2 years in which they also have to continue to receive transition services. So it's an ongoing system of making sure that we attend to the needs of members of our community who may require different services as well as more time to learn. Yes, sir.
So one of the things that we discussed at our Westchester Putnam meeting last week was what we are calling funny numbers. Funny numbers are not a joke. They're quite serious. But they're the numbers that New York State uses that are different from these numbers. They are asking you to use 06 and 10 numbers. You saw that. For what? For the purposes of establishing your foundation aid. That's really wrong, because if you look at your 06 and 10 numbers, they are much less needy than the numbers today really are. And that's a problem. And we made the analogy last week. You're not allowed to take your returns from 06 and pay income tax on that, or are you? Well, that's how ludicrous this is for a school district.
So again, our students require more resources than ever before. This is a look at our foundation aid, which represents our largest component of our state aid. And as you can see, the red line represents the amount that the state had promised us in the formula that was enacted 10 years ago. And the blue line represents the amount that they actually send us. And that represents about a $4 million deficit between what they had promised us and what we received, due to their inability to implement the legislation passed 10 years ago.
And those numbers that Dr. Jambor referenced and Mr. Carlson is alluding to, it really means that we're using 10-year-old census data to make decisions. We're using a calculation, a low calculation that underserves. I don't think there's a state a locality or district in the state of New York that's getting its ample, its appropriate funding. It also doesn't really look at what it means to educate the students on that previous slide, especially English as a new language learners. That they weren't in the numbers in 06.
Right.
So, and it's not just a student coming through and coming in kindergarten. If we get children in kindergarten, we can do a pretty good job with them. But if they're coming in as 17 or 18-year-olds who might have very deficient educational systems in their native countries, they may come to this district, functioning at a 5th grade level. And we have to educate those young people, and that requires more resources. So that foundation formula does not consider that.
So I was asked last week if our 2.04% tax levy for next year was considered going over the cap, and I just wanted to remind everyone that there is no such thing as a 2% tax cap. 2% is just one factor in an 8-step formula developed by the state. So it's about as real as the Loch Ness Monster, leprechauns, rainbow unicorns, which my 5-year-old twin daughters love, and I think this is Bigfoot.
I said
No, it's snowman. Oh
It's a 2-year-old son. So again, there is no such thing as a 2% tax cap. Again, in the 6-year existence, 2% has just been used in the formula 2 times. The formula actually calls for the lesser of 2% or the change in the consumer price index. And again, it's just one of 8 steps in this calculation. Each school district in New York State has its own unique tax cap. For the 16-17 school year, the range of tax caps that were reported to the Comptroller's office range from -8% to a positive 25%. So even that school district that levied a 25% increase was not considered going over the cap because it was within the formula established by New York State. So again, we have our tax cap results in a 2.04% levy increase. So we're at $72.5 million for the 17-18 year. However, this number is tentative and subject to change pending the final state aid budget. Usually involved in the state budget are some factors, some new legislation that affects our tax cap. Our 5-year average levy increase is about 1.9%. And here's a look at our revenue budget summary. Again, tax levy makes up the majority of it, $1.4 million increase or 2%. Local sources make up just $1 million, which include pilots, which are payments in lieu of taxes. These are agreements between the towns and local businesses to try to entice businesses to move into the towns to operate. Interest and refunds. State and federal aid is increasing $1.2 million up to $19.3. That's an increase of 6.7%. And we also included in our budget an amount above and beyond what the governor's proposal was. Typically, the adopted budget is a number above what the governor's proposal is, but usually less than what the legislative budget is. So we are anticipating an increase in our state aid above the governor's proposal. However, we're tempering our expectations, knowing that it's not an election year and we may not have that much wiggle room. Finally, our appropriated fund balance is the level of accumulated savings that we're using to offset next year's budget. And we're maintaining the same level of appropriated fund balance, $2.7 million. And that number is significant because that represents approximately 3% of our revenue budget. And that it matches the same amount of contingency on the expenditure side of our budget, which allows us to basically operate at a break-even operation. So that our total revenue budget is $95.4 million, an increase of $2.7 million or 2.9%. Where does the funding come from? Property taxes make up 76%. State aid makes up another 20%, and combined, these two revenue sources make up 96% of our revenue budget. So really, the state is holding all the cards in this. They're the ones controlling our state aid, and they control our tax levy. We have very little local discretion on how we build our revenue budget, and in fact, the only discretionary area is this 1%, which is even limited on its own. Appropriated fund balance again at 3%, which is a stable number. So we'll look at our general support budget, and our Board of Ed, District Meeting, Superintendent's Office, Finance Office budget is $1,426,000, an increase of $38,000 or 2.7%. And this increase is due to the resignation of the former civil service business manager, which allowed us to expand the role to a certificated position that is capable of taking on a larger administrative role district-wide. HR, personnel, legal, and public info is increasing $40,000 to $870,000, a 4.8% increase. And this is due to our continuing recruitment and also the addition of an employee assistance program to the BOCES. Operations and maintenance budget increased $213,000 to $5,185,000, an increase of 4.3%. We discussed this in detail at our March 7th board meeting. The main driver in this increase is due to the building additions at JFK and Starr that are resulting in additional square footage that require staffing for cleaning, and also additional utilities for natural gas and electric. Central data processing and printing increased about $13,000 or 2.7%. This increase is due to an increase in our bandwidth as we expand our one-to-one initiatives. Also, this category includes some of our safety and security equipment as we just expanded our security capabilities last year. We now have the ability to buy additional cameras. Property and casualty insurance remains the same at $350,000. School association dues remains relatively flat at $16,000. This category includes our participation in Westchester Public School Boards, in NISBA, and other national associations. Claims and tax refunds also remains flat at $84,000. And I also want to make note that we do have a tax cert reserve that protects the district for tax claims against us dating back for up to 4 years old. So if we do have a claim that comes in above our budget of $84,000, we do have a reserve to offset that. BOCES administrative and capital charges increased $21,000 up to $510,000, and this represents basically our admission fee into participating in BOCES services. Total general support budget is $8,945,000, an increase of $325,000 or 3.8%. Again, the major driving force in this number is due to our increase in O&M costs because of the building additions. Now we'll take a look at our instruction budget. Supervision and curriculum development appears to have decreased $64,000. However, this is due to a reclassification of the athletic department to the athletics clubs and athletics budget. Our supervision and curriculum development budget actually increased by about 5.5%. And as we continue our commitment to implementing our strategic coherence plan and providing much needed professional development for our teachers and support staff. Our general ed budget increased $448,000 to $27.5 million. This category includes the salary costs of teachers, teacher aides, teaching assistants, as well as instructional material aids such as textbooks, workbooks, supplies, etc. Special education budget increased $272,000 to $11,966,000. This category includes the salary costs of special ed teachers, teacher assistants, teacher aides, as well as instructional material costs. Also includes tuition costs for our students who are placed out of district in public and non-public settings. Finally, the occupational education budget decreased $332,000, and this is important. So this category represents the tuition costs that we send to BOCES to pay for the tuition costs of our career and technical education program. This program, you may recall a few years ago, where we brought our students back in district because we believed that they were better fit in our district than placed out at BOCES. However, we are just now actually reaping the benefits of the savings in that due to the way that BOCES bills us. So we have a decrease of $332,000 relating to our OCAD budget, and we're very happy to finally receive some relief from BOCES.
I'm sorry, just to clarify, so that's great. Just with the previous slide, just to make sure, so when you said the BOCES administrative, that's just their, that's what required.
That's our
portion?
entry fee.
Okay.
Yeah, that's our entry fee, and the BOCES, and Mary Kay could probably jump in. So the BOCES administrative and capital fee, those are their, essentially their overhead costs.
Right.
So their costs of administration, and then each component district has to pay a share of the administrative costs of BOCES. This budget line in particular here, the occupational education, is only for the tuition costs of the career and technical education program.
And it turns out to be more cost savings for districts when we participate in shared services. And then for some of the services we wouldn't be able to afford if BOCES didn't create a collective contract for the participating districts.
Thank you.
Victor, is that several years ago when we brought back so many students, you had said we would not see a change in the budget for a few years. That's what we're seeing now.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so there was a slight decrease in last year's budget,
Yeah.
but this is the larger decrease, which now represents what our continuing costs will be for our career and tech ed program.
Thank you.
Our library and technology budget is $2,201,000, an increase of $139,000 or 6.8%. And again, this increase is due to the implementation of our one-to-one initiative. Student support services budget is $2,875,000, and actually a decrease of about $5,000, and this is due to retirements within those departments. Categories include counseling, social work, health services, etc. Performing arts, clubs, and athletics budget is $1,448,000. $348,000 increase. Again, this is due to the reclassification of the athletic department to the clubs and athletics budget line. And another component of this increase is, as Ms. Gosh mentioned earlier, we've expanded our club offerings both at the high school and at the K-5 level. Our total instruction budget is $49,641,000, an increase of $806,000 or 1.7%.
Victor, does the technology budget include the smart schools money?
No, this is
So that's over and above?
This is aside from smart schools, because we're limited in what we're able to actually purchase with smart schools.
Okay.
We're limited to strictly equipment. Any professional development for implementing the Google Apps for Education or any other professional development is what's included in this budget.
But the Chromebooks did come out of the smart school.
Correct.
Correct.
Yep. So this is a new budget component for us, and we're very excited about it. The Community Learning Center and residency assistant, we have a budget of $50,000. And this budget line is largely going to be offset by the tuition registration revenues that we're going to be receiving from applicants as they apply for taking these courses. Also, this includes a residency assistant, which is going to provide additional oversight to the building level registrars in the applications for registration and also for residency investigations. The community schools grant is also something new for 17-18, and it's a grant that we're receiving. It's part of our foundation aid that we're receiving due to our increase in our E&L population as well as our low-income families. And I'm going to read the purpose of the grant program is to deliver co-located or school-linked academic, mental health, counseling, and or other services to students and their families in a manner that will lead to improved educational and other outcomes. We had a community schools aid allocation of $150,000. We have $128,000 set aside here for salaries and another $22,000 set aside for employee benefits. Total civic activities budget, $178,000. Transportation debt and transfers will be reviewed in detail at our March 7th meeting, so I'll go through this pretty quickly. Transportation budget is $6,245,000, an increase of 109, or 1.8%. The driving factors in that budget were an increase in contractual salary costs, offset by a decrease in our diesel fuel and gasoline costs. Our debt budget is $6,612,000, an increase of 672, or 11.3%. The reason for this is we begin paying principal and interest on the short-term borrowings for the ongoing district-wide construction project. So that represents that increase there. Our finance committee meets semi-annually with our fiscal advisor. They'll be meeting later this spring to discuss our current debt and our future borrowing options. Finally, interfund transfer remains flat at $420,000. This represents the district's portion of the summer special ed instruction program, which is mandated by student IEPs, and New York State picks up the remainder of the cost of that program. Our employee benefit budget. Our pension costs actually decreased significantly for next year, down $792,000, and we've experienced a decrease in both our ERS and our TRS pension systems. ERS applies to non-certificated employees, such as custodians, bus drivers, clerical staff. TRS mainly applies to administrators, teachers, and teaching assistants. This actually represents the third year of decline for both of these retirement systems, which is very encouraging. However, the actuaries have already warned us that we've likely hit the bottom of the decline in pension contribution costs, so not to expect any decreases moving forward. However, we do have a decrease of $792,000 for next year, so obviously that's very encouraging. Our Social Security budget is $3,891,000, an increase of about 2%, and that's in line with our contractual salary increases. Dental, health, and other benefits increasing about $1.3 million, or 10%, and this is due to an increase in our health insurance premiums. Over the past couple of years, our health insurance premiums have been relatively low, actually very low. They've been around 2% for the past 2 years. However, the premium increase for next year is about 8%. We also have an increase in Medicare reimbursement costs. So unfortunately, the pension relief that we receive up here, we're unfortunately giving it away down here in premium contributions. Our total employee benefit budget is $23,399,000, an increase of $583 or 2.6%. So here's a summary of our expenditure budget. Total expenditure budget, $95.4 million, an increase of $2.7 million, or 2.9%. The main drivers in this are increases in our instruction budget, our employee benefits budget, and also our debt. Here's a pie chart of how our budget is spent, and as you can see, the lion's share of our expenditures go directly to instruction and employee benefits. They make up 75% of our budget, with the other areas coming in at less than 10%. I'll hand it over to Ms. Koch.
Victor, the community schools grant, does that pay for the salaries for the before schools program that we're running for reading and math?
No, that's not usable until July. So
I'm
that
sorry?
That's not in the existing budget, it's in the 17-18, and there's very specific kinds of things that budget earmarks, which could support a summer program for children, which includes a meal program, both, and academic support as well as social, emotional, mental health support.
But not like the before school reading?
We
and
could.
like that. I'm just wondering
Yeah,
if
we
it
could
would cover that.
Yeah, we could. I think it covers, generally, the groups of young people who are identified in the grant would be the young people that we would want to come in earlier.
So each year at this time, the district reports out on class sizes and also does its best to, project what those class sizes will be for next year. So for each, we broke this down by building. For each building, what we are going to do is to give you the class size policy guidelines that we have, that the board has established, and also let you know how many students have come into the district since July 1st. Most of the time, more often than not, the schedules are complete, the instructional program is set by July 1 for the following year, so we need to make sure that we're constantly monitoring those numbers and making adjustments as necessary. So for JFK, our kindergarten class size policy is 18 to 22. This year, you'll see that we have 9 sections, and we are projecting that forward as well for next year. First and second grade, the class size guidelines 21 to 24. Again, no staffing changes, and we look to be within those guidelines at JFK. CV Starr. We have class size guidelines for third grade of 21 to 24, and fourth and fifth grade of 23 to 27. So this is an example of us needing to make an adjustment based on an increase in enrollment. So what we are recommending to the board is an increase of 1.0 FTE for third grade, bringing it up to 9 sections and bringing the class sizes down to 24. Mrs. Culligan will speak about that a little bit more later. The sections remain the same as fourth and fifth, and we are within the class size guidelines there as well. CV Starr has welcomed in 45 new students since July 1st. Well as middle school. Okay, so as we get into the secondary level, it becomes a little bit more difficult, a lot more difficult actually, to report on class sizes because we have specific classes, math and reading classes that are intentionally smaller. We also have, in these numbers, we did our best to put forward every core area class that we offer. So you'll see self-contained classes in here as well, which as are capped by law. Any reduction that you see in the number of sections does not have to do necessarily with teacher staff reduction, but instead changes to the program. So if we are eliminating self-contained sections, let's say in 6th grade, and we have self-contained sections leaving, going 8 to 9, then that would be reflected in the number of sections. Class size guidelines for grades 6 through 12 are 25 to 30, and we are below those guidelines. Wells has welcomed in 47 new students since July 1st. And if the middle school is difficult to look at class sizes, the high school is exponentially so. The high school has an enrollment next year of 1086, and you'll see that some of the enrollment by courses is larger than that number, and that's because of several reasons. One, because we included electives in this. And two, because social studies, for example, might be half-year courses. So we wanted to make sure we put the number of sections that we had in and the total enrollment. Just like at Wells, the numbers here for average class size, both for this year and next year projected, include self-contained sections. It also includes AP sections. It also includes non-special education courses that are intentionally smaller, targeted intervention courses.
So this first slide illustrates the loss of approximately 55 positions since the 2008-2009 school year. We are proposing the following changes. The addition of a 0.6 FTE ENL teacher at JFK. This is a cost-saving measure as we have been paying full-time teachers additional stipends to cover the instruction. The addition of an elementary teacher due to increased enrollment at CV Starr. The addition of a physical education position at Brewster High School. This will open up more opportunities and the flexibility to add adapted PE classes as necessary. The addition of a 0.4 math teacher at the high school to give us flexibility to add STEAM classes.
And we're also able through, and actually the next two items, the bilingual school counselor and world language teachers actually are, the world language teacher FTE will be used for that bilingual school counselor, mental health provider position. For the last few years, we've had a mental health task force, and we've identified that as an area that we need to provide assistance for. In addition to the fact that in our school counseling office at the high school, the staff works extremely hard, but they are hindered by the fact that they don't have a bilingual team member there to help them out. So this gives us an opportunity to both provide an additional counselor who's bilingual, as well as someone who has a mental health has a certified mental health background that will help us with our high school students.
In the speech, there was retirement at the high school, and so we reviewed the need for speech services, and it was determined that the high school doesn't need a full-time speech therapist, so that will be a 0.6 position at the high school. the CSE chair behavioral analyst. We posted the CSE chair initially as a stipended position, but unfortunately we didn't have anyone interested. So then we moved to a .5 position. We decided to combine that position with a .5 behavioral analyst to keep the services in district, because at the present time we're paying a consultant to do this work.
And just as it was important to add a mental health support at the high school, we couldn't not have that at the K-8 level. So, we wanted to make sure that throughout the system at JFK, CVS, Starr, and Wells, that we would have a district-wide person who is a certified mental health provider, would be able to work with our youngsters who are experiencing stress and trauma and other kinds of experiences that, as talented as our clinical team is, there is some specialized training that a mental health provider would have that we don't currently have. And to be quite honest, the clinicians spend a great deal of time already doing a tremendous amount of work, and this is needed in order for them to be able to continue to do the work that they're doing.
This slide illustrates the changes in teacher aide staffing. The 7 positions with asterisks were added this year due to IEP requirements. The 1 position that will be abolished next year is due to retirement that does not need to be replaced. These are additional staffing changes. The manager of the Brewster Community Learning Center will oversee the program. This is a stipended position. The 2 part-time cleaners are due to the additional classroom space. The E&L specialist was added this past fall. That's due to the increasing population of our E&L students. This is a senior clerk position that Victor previously spoke about for the Brewster Community Learning Center and to help with the residency issues. The senior clerk for facilities, this was previously a .5 clerical aide position, which you can see right below it is being abolished. And this is to have a full-time senior clerk to help with the increasing needs in that department. And then the athletic equipment assistant concession liaison. This will be a stipended position with the duties of overseeing the concession stand and assisting the athletic director with the athletic equipment. The needs for this position are seasonal from August to November, and again from April through June.
We wanted to show you our staffing over the last several years in the E&L department. So we decided to include teachers and teaching assistants in here. So on the right-hand column, you'll see total FTE or full-time equivalent. You'll see that, as we mentioned before, as Victor and Dr. Honey mentioned, 2014-15, we brought students back into district. That's where we see the big jump, the biggest jump. And we have responded to our demographic shifts and our changing needs as needed throughout the subsequent years. In terms of special education, this is just teachers, not aides, not teaching assistants, just special education teachers. Again, these are IEP driven, and as we move forward towards a least restrictive environment, we want to make sure that we maintain obviously adequate staffing levels, and we are projecting, even though the meetings are not complete yet, we are projecting the same staffing level for special education.
And that brings us to our next discussion topic, our last discussion topic, thankfully. Proposition number 2 for bus purchases, and for the past 4 years, this district has wisely committed to a fleet replacement plan to address the needs of our aging fleet, and we know that a fleet replacement plan is the most predictable, cost-effective, and safest means of budgeting. So this chart here shows the age spread of our current fleet, and as you can see, we have 31 buses that are 15 years or older, and that represents 29% of our aging fleet. What we would recommend is following a 15-year fleet replacement plan, which basically assigns a third of our fleet in each 5-year increment. However, you'll see that following a 15-year fleet replacement plan, that puts us in danger here, knowing that we have 31 vehicles that are over 15 years old, and it's inevitable that these vehicles will soon come out of service. So what we need to do is to plan to replace them. But before we do that, we want to take a look back of the history that created the situation that we're in. So for several years in succession leading up to the 01-02 school year, 0 buses were purchased, and that created somewhat of a fiscal cliff that forced the district into purchasing 23 buses in a single year. It happened again to a lesser extent in 05, 06, and 07, 08, when 16 and 15 buses were purchased, respectively. And what that does is it creates a multi-million-dollar spike in purchases, which can easily be avoided by following a fleet replacement plan. And that's represented by this straight green line here that shows a level and consistent approach to replacing our aging fleet. So based on a 15-year life cycle, that means that we will need to purchase 7 buses each year. However, this assumes that we had followed a fleet replacement plan all along, and as we saw from our last slide, it's obviously not the case. So we have 31 buses that are already over 15 years old that will be falling out of service, so we need to prepare for their replacement. So what we're proposing is to borrow $750,000 to purchase 2 76-passenger buses, 3 48-passenger buses, 2 30-passenger buses, and 1 7-passenger vehicle. And you'll notice that there's a variety of vehicles that we're proposing for purchase, and that's due to the geography of our district, which we need different vehicles to navigate different neighborhoods. So we are aided by New York State by 45% of the cost. So essentially this works out to a buy one, get one free deal.
And what does that look like, sir?
And what does that look like? So based on the 8 vehicles that we are proposing to purchase, it appears that we would probably be able to purchase the 3 48s and the 1 7-passenger vehicle, and then get the other 2 vehicles for free if that math works out. So again, it works out essentially to a buy one, get one free deal. It's very good that we have a transportation aid of 45%. So the payments are spread out over 5 years in the same manner as a car loan. However, our first payment isn't due until the 2018-19 school year, and not the 17-18 year that's coming up. The projected annual cost is about $90,000 in that state aid. And the annual cost to the average Southeast and Patterson homeowner is just $8 and $7 respectively. So the next step in this process is for the board to consider approving the bus bond proposition, which is on tonight's agenda. If the board approves the proposition, or excuse me, the agenda item tonight, it'll then go out to the voters on May 16th. So on May 16th, we have a proposed budget of $95,439,381, which is an increase of 2.9%. The tax levy associated with that is $72,502,849, an increase of 2%. And as we just discussed, proposition number 2, to borrow and purchase new school buses for $750,000. And again, this first impacts the 2018-19 budget and not the 17-18 budget. So what we do know is that things will change. So our final state aid allocation we should know in time for our April 4th budget presentation. The state budget is due April 1st. Our actual enrollment will change. Again, as Ms. Kosh mentioned earlier, we did have a number of students that joined us after July 1st. Special education classifications, our CSEs, will be held later this spring. And because of those last 2 bullets, the required staffing level is uncertain. And also our year-end fund balance, we won't really know until August of 2017. Our next presentation is scheduled for April 4th, right here at the district office. And we should have an adopted state budget at that point in time to present a final budget for the board's consideration. So here are the important dates to remember. We've already reviewed our fixed costs and revenues at March 7th. Tonight's presentation is instruction, general, support, and employee benefits. April 4th is our proposed budget. April 20th is the budget adoption. May 9th is the informational budget hearing. May 16th is the budget vote. Please come out to vote. And also visit our website for copies of this presentation, other budget materials. Please also follow me on Twitter and also listen to my podcast, Ms. Gosh. And my YouTubes, and I'm all over social media. Any questions?
I just actually want to say, despite all the changes going on and the financial situation that we find ourselves, the wall that we're facing, and I'm just like looking through the slides and listening to the presentation, it's just really nice, like our strategic coherence plan, watching it come together. And then 2 of the things that just stood out, and there's so much, but you know, we're finding ways around our financial situation. We have to, because we have to go forward. We don't really have a choice. And so some of the things, you know, like the, you know, finding the internal professionals to guide each other and not have to outsource things, and you know, and just different ideas like the restorative justice. That's something that, again, because the cost associated with a lot of things that if we weren't doing that, what would happen instead? So it's nice to see our creative thinking at work and trying to find new ways to combat our situation. So thank you.
Thank you.
Just two questions. Victor, way back at the beginning, when you talked about the federal aid, I'm assuming that's before these supposed cuts that we discussed.
Mm-hmm.
We don't get those grants until August. So we're notified in around May or June what our allocation is, and the allocation is always based upon all these numbers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the numbers of low-income youngsters and English as a new language learners. So we don't know that until this budget is passed. So
okay. So that the cuts that we were talking about before are not a part of this as of yet.
They're not. And just so that you know, we already have sort of a harbinger of things to come. Our Title I grant was cut by $10,000 already.
Mm-hmm.
How do you budget when how do you plan when out of nowhere you get a notification from the state that you're going to lose $10,000?
Mm-hmm.
So that's that's probably what's going to be happening moving forward. That's the first time that's happened, certainly since I've been here. It's usually been maybe 500 or 1,000, but 10,000 is pretty significant.
Also, there was one less language teacher at the high school, is that correct?
Yes, and that was...
Is that because we're dropping in numbers of kids who want to take the courses, or?
Restructuring.
Yes, there was retirement that because of the enrollment, we do not need to replace.
Okay.
So that's why we're going to have the bilingual counselor instead.
And I would not be true to myself and all my questions. Elementary reading. Have we looked at all into some more support services at the elementary level?
For students with disabilities or for students in general?
In general. And I say that because, you know, I taught reading recovery for a number of years. And I know that most often the kids that are kind of just on the borderline, if given some additional help for 12 or 14 weeks, we never have to service them again, which saves us money in the long run. And so, you know, I'm just wondering, with our changing population, with our average types of kids, you know, have we looked at all into perhaps additional support services at the elementary level?
Actually, there was an additional amount of money added to both the JFK and CD Starr budgets this year, which rolls over into next year, and it supports more opportunities for planning before and after school programs, especially before school reading programs, which have been very successful in those buildings. So instead of pulling children during the course of the school day, some funds are available to offer those services early before the school day starts. And also, we're looking at, you know, ways to make sure that we have an array of reading programs available, you know, not any particular program, but being able to identify across, you know, both reading teachers and special educators, expertise that they have, whether it's something that they do know or other programs that they may be interested in learning, so that we have those available to children as we need them. And again, a lot of this, you know, evolves. So, you know, over time, you know, just as all of this has happened, you know, and there's no mystery that our low-income numbers, you know, that also means that there's not sufficient resources at home for children to read.
Right.
So we do have to, you know, pay attention to that, and hopefully some of that community aid money can support some of this.
Well, my just follow-up question to that is, and not knowing what the makeup of the present before school program is now. Robin and Frank spoke a lot about the 20%. Do the morning programs support, say, maybe 30% or 35%? That's my question. Are we only dealing with the 20% or the lowest 20%, or are we dealing with the kids that are kind of on the cusp?
Well, We have to keep
In
those
that- in
numbers
those
low in
programs.
the morning. I mean, the beauty of offering it in the morning is we do have to have a lower ratio in order for that to be effective. So you can't have lots of children. There are reading teachers, but the reading teachers have to, travel across, 700 children. And not that they have to service them all, but they're in different places in the building. And we also don't want to have a read to learn process where children are pulled out of classroom instruction in order for them to get the reading services. So it continues to be a challenge. I mean, I won't understate that. To schedule, to make good choices, to make sure that we, are providing assistance. But we're also, as I mentioned in one of the slides, focusing on differentiation. We're focusing on professional learning so that teachers can work together to borrow strategies that are successful, that can be brought into the classroom. So maybe it's the interventionist isn't the one delivering it, but the interventionist is working with the classroom teacher so that those strategies are shared with that person. So a lot of that is happening as well.
Thanks. What are Z-spaces?
Z-spaces? Well,
Some of us know it.
Some of us know
I
what
don't.
Z-spaces.
Sorry. Would you enlighten me, please?
Sure. Z-space is it's a virtual technology experience where students can come in and can virtually dissect a heart. A heart. That's much better. What else did you see at the?
But there were biospheres, right?
What did you hold? Didn't you hold?
Yeah, you work with the stylus and you wear glasses and you're able to navigate the whole thing, so you get a 3D image and you can see a whole ecosystem and watch the caterpillar turn into the butterfly for kids at the elementary level. At the high school level, you can dissect a heart. It's really, there was something there for every level, K through 12. And it was pretty fascinating. And I'm saying this as not a tech person. And I thought it was pretty amazing.
There's also support, the Z-spaces also support the engineering, design courses that we talked about in Project Employ, because instead of, spending hours, creating designing through a 3D machine or printer, you can actually do the design, virtually. And so you can make some changes before you even go to the 3D printer, which of course saves resources and time, but it just gives children a different way to sort of solve problems, and it's an integration of all those skills that are part of our strategic coherence plan. So they're not that expensive. They're great to put into centers, into the secondary level, to the to anywhere, to a makerspace, and you just have to see it. And what actually we will try to do is organize a presentation so that you can actually see it, because seeing is believing, and it's not a toy. It really does help children to conceptualize some ideas that are pretty abstract, and through that Z-space you can actually break them down and see them and see the parts of them, which again is a critical component of problem solving.
Thank you. I don't know if I was the only one in the room who didn't know what a Z-space was.
Well, thank you all very much. It's a big job. While you're getting back to your seats, I appreciate your comments, Sonia, in appreciating everyone's contribution to making it work. But there's times in life where you get punished for being successful. And, I keep track of the numbers. We lost $11 million while the GEA was in effect. That hurt us. There's just no sense playing pretend that it didn't hurt. It hurt us. $11 million hurt every department and probably every person who works here in this system. We will adapt. That's who we are. That's our Brewster pride. And thank you for acknowledging that. But it's going to make it easier for other folks to take money away from us, because they're going to say, well, they make do. That's not the intended circumstance that we want, really, unfortunately. Okay, moving forward, well, we have these action items. That'll be nice. They move quickly, right? Kind of. Okay, so we have the approval of the bus bond proposition. It's a roll call vote. This is what Victor was preparing us for. Is there anything else you'd like to say at this moment in time, Mr. Carlson?
No, I'll just reiterate again. It's a $750,000 borrowing spread out over 5 years, just like the car loan. Next 18-19 is the first year.
Terrific. We'll take a motion, please, for your consideration of this action item. Thank you, Mary Kay. Thank you, oh my gosh.
Kristen.
See, when I got myself trapped, I'm going to tell you the truth, is I don't know if I'm going with first name or last name. And there's an argument for each, but I'm not going to waste your time on that. Okay, thank you both for making the motion and seconding. Any questions or comments from the board? Yeah, roll call. What do you say?
Ms. O'Brien, your vote?
Yes.
Ms. Masika?
Yes.
Dr. Jambor?
Yes.
Ms. Cosma? Ms. Nielsen?
Yes.
And Ms. Kikal?
Yes.
Yes, indeed. Okay, thank you
Resolution is
all. The
adopted.
motion passes 6-0. We move our attention now to action item number 2, which concerns the approval of award of contracts pursuant to competitive bids, A, for the district office renovation, B, for the district office renovation electrical, C, for the district office renovation heating and air conditioning, and then finally, district office renovations and plumbing. Wow, district office is getting renovated. About time. We'll take a motion, please, for your consideration of this action item. Thank you, Ms. O'Brien. Thank you, Ms. Masika. Do you know that the district office still shakes in a stiff wind, though? All right, so I'd mention that. It does. All those in favor? The motion passes 6-0. Action item number 3, the approval of participation in cooperative bids for educational data services, Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES, Southern Westchester BOCES, and the Clarkstown Central School District. This is in a way we have of containing cost. Mr. Carlson.
Yes, exactly. This is a cost savings measurement. We competitively bid certain materials and supplies as well as our diesel fuel collectively with other school districts and municipalities in the region, and that effectively gets us better rates on the responses from the contractors.
It does indeed. Thank you so much. We'll take a motion, please, for your consideration of this action item.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Cosmo. Thank you, Ms. Kakal. So you're back to Ms. and Ms. Okay. Questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, the motion passes 6-0. Action item number 4, the approval of the intermunicipal agreement with Putnam County regarding property tax collection. Mr. Carlson.
Yes, this is an annual agreement that we have with with Putnam County for processing our property tax bills. It's an annual contract again, and I believe the total cost is just a few $1,000s.
Okay. We'll take a motion, please, for your consideration of this action item. Thank you, Ms. Nielsen. Thank you, Ms. O'Brien. Questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, all those in favor, the motion passes 6-0. Action item number 5 pertains to the approval of a resolution to hold the annual reorganization meeting here on July 11th. We have to do that.
Yes.
Yes. Ms. Call and Ms. Nielsen. Motion and seconded. Questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, all those in favor? We're going to have a reorg meeting. Okay, that's great. Action item number 6, the approval of the Wells 8th grade trip to Washington, D.C. on April 25th to the 27th. Next year, 2018. Okay, that's always a good one. You've been on those trips. And we returned.
And returned.
Mr. Clark started this trip several years ago. It's been a success. And if we are able to lock in the dates now, we get better rates for the students next year.
Sounds good to me. Okay, so we'll take a motion, please, for your consideration of this important action item. Thank you, Ms. Kakal. Thank you, Ms. Nielsen. Ms. Cosmo, I'll get you next time. Questions or comments from the board?
I have a question.
Sure.
So I'm guessing, from what I read, the school district isn't liable, I don't know which word to direct it, for anything in terms of if the trip gets canceled. This is all going from parents to the tour
Vendor.
group, the vendor. So we're not liable for anything.
We don't collect any money.
We don't
It goes
collect any
directly
money,
to
so-
the, right.
Okay.
And our board policy states that we have the flexibility to cancel it for safety or for whatever reason under the superintendent's purview.
And just one more question. I know that the students have to be in good standing, and they have the opportunity to raise scholarship money. Is that correct? To go towards it? Did I read that correctly, or?
They don't have the opportunity to raise, they don't do any
Maybe I didn't read it
fundraising for their trip
correctly.
themselves.
Okay.
We do, through the pasta dinner each year, we
Okay,
do come up with a scholarship fund.
good. Okay, I just want to make sure that no child is, ever,
We've
out of
been
luck.
fortunate, through the success of the
Okay.
fundraising to offer several trips, kids assistance
Okay.
with scholarships.
Okay, great, thank you.
Worked out well.
Thanks.
All right, good question, good answer. Other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? The motion passes unanimously, 6-0. Action item number 7 concerns all of those policies we've been hearing about. Look at all those numbers that you can read just as well as I can. Thousands. Yeah, lots of them.
Each and every one of them right now.
Okay, so we'll take a motion, please, for your consideration of this action item. Thank you, Ms. O'Brien. Thank you, Ms. Masika. Questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, all those in favor, the motion passes 6-0. Action item number 8 concerns the approval of agreement for pest management services, otherwise known as the roof problem.
Everyone shake.
Yeah. I have to tell you, I don't really mind this. I mean, I grew up in the Bronx. Didn't expect it here in Brewster, though.
As I mentioned earlier, we want to, going forward, we want to take a proactive approach
Yep.
rather than a reactive approach and incorporate this as our normal maintenance routine.
You better check with somebody in Washington, though, because I'll bet you they're on the endangered species list. Well, seriously, they're from a long time ago. All right. Take a motion, please, for your consideration of this important pest management services. Thank you, Ms. McCall. Thank you, Ms. Nielsen. Questions or comments from the board?
One
Yes.
question. Okay, so I noticed the agreement, it seems like it's for where the issue is if, I don't want to speak the words, but if the problem kind of gets larger.
Migrates?
Yeah, migrates. Will we have to reissue a new contract if we have to go into other buildings, or?
We actually, this is for the entire district.
Okay, because it just,
Yeah, it's this building, it's the bus garage, it's every
Okay,
office
good,
in this district. So that's the difference in terms of the
Good,
service
that's-
that we're doing. I mean, that's the different intervention that we're using, is that we're not just going to focus on the source or the place where we've spotted the 4-legged creatures or 6-legged creatures, but that it's all over the district, every place.
okay, because I wasn't sure, so thanks for that clarification, I wasn't sure, and I'm glad to hear that, that's good. Thank you.
Are there 8? Okay, 4 was a little loud.
My name was
They had 8 legs.
There's some information.
These are Brewster roaches.
Everything's bigger in Brewster.
Okay, so we got a motion. It's been seconded. We now know how many legs they have. All those in favor, the motion passes 6-0. Last but not least is action item approving the MOA with the BTA. Ms. Culligan.
This is an employee disciplinary settlement with the BTA.
Thank you so much. Take a motion, please, for your consideration of this action item. Thank you, Ms. O'Brien. Thank you, Ms. Masika. Questions or comments from the board on this confidential matter? Seeing none, all those in favor, the motion passes 6-0. The consent agenda.
Steve, I'd like to actually make a motion that I don't know if you want to adjourn to exec for 2 items on the consent agenda for 10 minutes right now.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to just pull them out and vote on the rest, or just have our,
Let's
for
try that.
3, 1, and 3.
Let's try pulling the 2 out, dealing with the rest. We're going to exec anyway.
Well, no, to do exec now, for just a 10 minutes and
okay.
have the discussion. I don't think it would take that much time.
Okay.
And then we can just have it all.
Could we adjourn to exec and just come back for whatever you vote
For those
on?
for those 2
At the end
items?
of tonight, you mean?
Yeah.
What's your recommendation, Steve, for those 2 items?
Whatever is the most serendipitous or easy.
So then if we
Table it till after, but then we
but
would.
just those 2
For
items,
just the
and
2
then
items.
we would just make note that we are coming back out of
As we've
exec.
done before.
Yeah, I don't mind.
At the end?
Yeah. I think it's
Okay.
probably better for everyone in the audience.
That's fine. Okay, so then I'd like to make a motion to table in the consent agenda 3.1 and 3.8.
3-1 and 3-8.
for executive session, which we would then come back at the end after.
Okay, so then that means we need a motion to consider the amended consent agenda. Questions or comments regarding the amended consent agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor? Those items are accepted. Thank you, 6-0. Okay, now, coming around the corner, we're looking at board remarks.
We didn't have to vote on the consent agenda, we just voted to hold on this.
Oh, we did?
The new consent.
Oh, we did?
Yeah.
I'm voting for the
We voted for the amendment.
Yeah.
Okay,
And then we're gonna vote the way it
so
stands.
motion for the second.
So I'll make a motion to vote for the consent agenda minus those two
As
items.
amended.
Okay, as amended.
Seconded.
Okay. Is anybody here for their first board meeting? I asked because we really look sharper than this normally. Okay. You got the amended one. It's been seconded. All those in favor? The motion passes 6-0.
Now the consent, now we go.
Now we can go to board remarks. All right. What do you want to remark about?
Okay, so I'm gonna jump in, and then I'm gonna actually, on one item, segue over to your feedback. So way back when, before Stella hit, I went to, with Kristen and Steve, you were there, the legislative forum. We got to sit down with our legislatures and
Right.
once again talk about the budget and what is going on. And two things that I want to share. Well, you know, Terrence Murphy is a great supporter, so I was at his table with his aide. He took back what our concerns were, and there were two things that I shared with him when he's talking about budgets and such. Education, public education is our great equalizer. Doesn't matter where you live over here, you live over here. You wear these shoes or you wear these shoes. You have this style hair, you have that style hair. Doesn't matter when it comes to education. Everyone is educated well when you're in public education. And as long as we make public education the best, that's our great equalizer. When we start saying, well, you'll get a good education if you can pay for it here, that's when you're going down a very slippery slope of a class system. And I was very excited that he kind of said, and that, you know, he got that. And I'd like to, I also made note that when we say we're going to educate all students, you know, things that are near and dear to my heart are, you know, the students, I'm trying to find, you know, my student has what he needs, is basically the best way to put it. However, public education gave my student the ability to take an economics class that showed him how much he loves finance, that enabled him to pick a major in college that he would not have had if he had just kind of, you know, gone to some school somewhere else. So that's public education. So it's not just when we look at the demographics and we say, you know, the ELLs, the ENLs are increasing. We have to take care of, you know, special education. It's all students. Every student deserves and has the legal, constitutional right to public education. So that's what I brought to him. And the other thing we shared was on our numbers, the state has a requirement that says you have to have 11%, we can only have 11% classified in special education. And if we don't, we get cited. And I looked at him and said, the other 3% don't know that it's 11%. So when we have 14%, that 3% doesn't know. So when we get fined and we get cited, they don't know that. And again, you know, you see that aha moment because they're so used to the legal jargon, they don't see the dining room table, the kitchen table conversation. So that was a benefit. I'll come back to ESSA when we're done, but I want to segue because Kristen had something to share with some of our numbers as well from that.
Yeah, it was great going. I found it to be fascinating and interesting. And the United Way presented, as you know, Steve and Mary Kay, the study that they've done in 15 states called ALICE. And ALICE stands for Asset Limited, income constrained, employed. So we're talking about not the families that are economically disadvantaged, but we're talking about those families that are just surviving.
Barely, yeah.
Barely surviving. In Putnam County, we have 33% that are Alice, identified as Alice. In Westchester, it's 34% of households. In Brewster, one part of Brewster, 79%.
Oh,
That to me, I mean, that I don't even know what to say about that.
And we
That's
put
just-
together the 29% that's economically disadvantaged and 79% of all of Brewster, that, you know, like, this is a disadvantaged area.
Yeah, and you know, she gave an example of the cost of living in Putnam County. It costs $79,000 to simply survive in Putnam County, and that is having a 2-bedroom rental for a family of 4 with an old car and non-regulated childcare. So, you know, and this, again, this does not count that 29% of economically disadvantaged. This is a whole new number. So I'm just concerned that we're going to have more anxiety issues, mental health issues, kids that might be hungry. So I just, you know, I thought this was fascinating. I'm glad we're getting some mental health support in the schools, but I think we're just seeing the beginning. And I hate to be so dismal about that. But
you're being honest, and this is the part of the story that the funny numbers don't talk about.
Doesn't add up.
And so you have an obligation, and thank you for taking it so seriously, to bring the information back to folks, because it's not the data set that they're using in Albany.
Yeah.
And then to jump to the ESSA forum, every student succeeds at,
Right.
yeah, okay. So what that forum at BOCES was, the state education department, please correct me if I get this wrong, the state education department needed to formulate an opinion based on, you know, statewide, what to then present to the federal government, what we want. So we were asked a lot of questions, and many of the questions came with, you know, would you like more testing in order to get state aid? Would you take a medium amount? Like, and every one of them were, yeah, I don't want the state dealing with any of us, you know. So the general consensus was, we don't want the state telling us, you know. So hopefully, because this was educators giving the forum, you know, giving the forum and at the forum, hopefully our answers came across. And please have, you know, the government, whether it be in Albany or Washington, get out of the business of educating, because they're not doing a great job when they tell us how many tests we have to put in, what the teachers have to do, what they have to, the answers, and how many questions they have to get right so the teachers can get their review, and blah, blah, blah. So it was, it was long, but I feel that our group got the message that I think most of the state wanted to convey. So.
Thank you. A busy but productive week for you. Great. Okay. Public remarks and information. The floor is yours, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, ma'am. Welcome.
My name is Emery Kuleski. I'm representing as a parent as well as a PTA.
Yep.
I missed, and I apologize, I missed some of the presentation on the budget, but I'm concerned about the numbers of classroom sizes for Starr specifically. And I know it doesn't only affect me, but my phone's been kind of buzzing all day about the average number of students per class currently. I know it shows 21 to 24, but I know there's some that are taxed at like 27 or 28. So my concern is, I know we're going to, are we hoping to stay at 9 teachers for that session? Are we looking to add, and I apologize, I missed some of that, but the parents are concerned that if we shorten, because there's a lot of shifting 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, because 4th grade is a large class. We have a lot of teachers, and like last year, a lot of 5th grade went down to 4th because we had to accommodate for a larger session. Now we might have that same shift going into 5th grade, so the concern is that if we're starting at 27, we can enroll anywhere between 20 and 50 kids in a 6 to 8 month period during the year. So where do we put, you know, so I apologize if I missed, if we're keeping that the same, if we're looking to add staff, but that is a concern out there if we're looking at budget numbers now to try and add
That's a good question.
sessions. So that's one piece. The second piece about our little creature friends. Are we doing the fumigating over break, or is that something that's gonna be done in all the buildings on the weekend, or
During the breaks.
during the breaks?
And it's scheduled now, it'll be routine, so it won't just be, one time and in response to something, but it'll be on an ongoing basis so that we proactively manage it so that we don't have a nest anywhere. And then you did miss, Anne Marie, we are adding a 1.0 FTE to CD Starr.
To go grade, or we're just gonna see how it falls
Go
out?
to third grade.
Okay, third grade. Okay, great, thank you.
Other questions or comments from the public? Yes, ma'am.
So my question goes back to the last board meeting and this one again. With the strategic coherence plan, you're looking at the social and emotional aspect,
Yes.
and you're looking at ruler, and you're looking at COPE, and you're looking at implementing PBIS. How is its success going to be tracked? Are there internal incident reports, or is this done through DASA? Because when I looked on the website, I couldn't find any DASA data.
Okay.
So maybe you could clarify for me, do we have DASA data? Is it reported to the website and I'm just not techie enough to find it?
Okay. Great question. Yeah, I'll pick up a piece and I'll get going.
The DASA data is part of a state repository, so every year all of our data is uploaded, so you get to compare us to every other district. There's, in our student management system, we do track these data. There's surveys as part of measuring school climate, there are incidence reports. Our schools are using that information to determine the impact of certain programs. So if there is a focus on ensuring that children have are less rowdy in the hallways, for example. There's ways to track that by looking at those incident reports and determining how often, the frequency, that the frequency increase or decrease. So some of those standard measures, and each building has its own PBIS team. This is our first year where we, have a full year of PBIS implementation. So part of that process is to survey the students. There's actually a survey system in one of our grades at the middle school that they tried last year as a basis of being able to capture information about how children are doing. So that information is available. So if you wanted to check with the high school, they can certainly review the DASA data with you if you'd like to, or make available a report that is submitted to the state.
So just for clarification for myself, so there's a different report between DASA and an incident report?
There are incident reports. I mean, the student management system where we collect these data are used to report the DASA data. DASA has a number of categories that then we pull the data from our student management system that captures the numbers of incidents, whether it's the numbers of times a student has been disciplined for doing something in some place in the building, or whether it's cutting or coming late. All of that information is tracked, and if it fits into a DASA category, then it's reported. But those DASA categories are pretty clear, and there's been training for the DASA coordinators so they can easily, readily identify those areas that we have to track.
So if it doesn't fall into a DASA category in particular, but it's an incident or an occurrence, whatever word is more politically correct and appropriate, how is that reported? Because I'm assuming through ruler and COPE and the PBIS, you're looking for a reduction.
Yes, if I may. So it's more likely to show up in a PBIS format, even before it gets to the level of a DASA incident per se. But much further down in this intervention scheme, when you're looking at COPE, or if you're looking at ruler, you're going to be talking to people in the classroom and the students themselves at what we call process level behaviors. So students are interacting and talking differently with one another, and it's really observable. In fact, I've watched it in the Connecticut program that we visited with 4-year-old children. You could clearly see the effect of the treatment in the way they were changing their behaviors, not only by themselves, self-monitoring, but then in their interaction with others. And that's indeed what encouraged us to buy into the ruler model, because it had effectiveness at such a young age.
I guess my concern is the high school that hasn't rolled it rolled it out to certain grades and where they're at and incidents and occurrences going on
Right.
at that point. And
Yep.
just that's one follow-up question and then I'll stop. With suspensions of children with IEPs, it is my understanding the IDEA has regulations to have MDR hearings. How are the parents notified of those hearings?
Ms. Kennedy?
So the question is, how are parents notified of manifestation determination meetings?
Yes.
They are contacted via phone, they're sent letters. There is definitely personal, at least phone contact made, and it's typically it's within 5 days at most of the situation, which requires a manifestation determination meeting.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So that if that, I don't want to take all the stuff, I'll just leave it there.
But you know, you have some very worthwhile questions. You may want to follow up.
So my question then is, if a parent wasn't notified of an MDR hearing and their child was suspended, I guess I need to investigate what their rights are at that point. Or is
Right.
there
Or-
something definitely that needs to be
We'll
done?
make a
Ms. Kennedy?
follow-up meeting with the people that are involved, because certainly that's more of a conversation, and that's a better setting for that kind of
Well, I
conversation.
think it's not just one child though. I think many of the parents of students with disabilities are unaware of their rights to have MDRs. And that's my point here, that is something that is not buried on this Brewster site, but it's buried in general in education sites, that this right is there for students with disabilities.
So the best thing would be to start the conversation, move it into the open, and see where we go from there.
Right, and it's a concern for all parents with students with disabilities.
Perhaps it will be. We'll see.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Seeing none, I think you've got a motion for us.
Yes. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn to exec. We have a few things on the agenda. The tabled item of consent agenda, as well as meeting with our attorney for county transportation discussion, tenure review. We have personnel issues and I believe student discipline issue. Yes.
Okay. Thank you so
Deposit
much.
stuff.
That's a good motion. We have a second. Thank you, Ms. O'Brien.
Oh, I'm so sorry, and yes, it's anticipated that we will return to take action on the
Those
consent
two.
agenda. Yes, sorry.
Good point. All those in favor? Motion passes 6-0. You have your work cut out for you.